Sol, thank you so much for joining us once again. How are you, brother?
I'm doing really well, Pete. Thanks for having me again. There was a lot of really good feedback on our last chat, so I was hoping we might be able to talk again one of these days, and here we are.
Here we are. Well, we've definitely traveled some miles, I'd say, over since our last chat and
Yeah, I
individually and
wanted to
collect.
ask how you're doing down there, with everything going on. I've got several good friends down under, and my heart certainly goes out, and my thoughts often trend that way. So I've thought about you a number of times. How are you doing?
Mate, I'm doing really well. My wife and I, Nick, have opened a health retreat. We might have just been over a year, so we probably were opening when we spoke last time. And yeah, it's been great. We're loving what we're doing. We have the most amazing guests that come through. We teach cooking retreats, wellness retreats, yoga retreats. So yeah, it's really good. I've been able to incorporate pretty much everything that I've learned over the last 30 or more years in the culinary space and the health space into one venue. And yeah, we're living on the land on 200 acres of majestic rainforest, very sacred land. So
Oh
yeah,
my.
I definitely cannot complain, and I'm very grateful for the experience that we've manifested for ourselves, and yeah, grateful for all the guests that come through to support us as well, which is yeah, really beautiful, because we've been beaten around the bush, so to speak, in by the media over here for labeled a crazy, a crackpot. They call me disgraced whenever they use an adjective to describe me in the media these days. So yeah, so grateful for the support still from people that get it. And I know you get it, which is why you're back on the podcast too. And I got your email about wanting to explore more of the Gnostic teachings. So yeah, first
Yeah.
off,
So
give me an update on Sol's journey over the last year or two since the shit show has can I call it a shit show? Since
Oh yeah,
the
probably should.
transition, the human transitional period is taking place, maybe.
Yeah, that's right. Wow. Yeah, I've really been in a major learning mode in my life. I've been exploring, the idea of Tartaria and resets and different Earth histories and geologies and all kinds of things, and wicking that into some of the things I learned in my explorations into Gnosticism and writing, Kali the Destroyer. And that's been a journey, a real journey, going down rabbit hole after rabbit hole after rabbit hole. It's made me feel very alive, very kind of in tune with the idea of living in the mystery and that being okay, into the mystic, as Van Morrison would have put it. What I've been doing. I've been going into the mystic ever deeper, and it's been really, I'd have to say, it's been amazing and absolutely fascinating. And I've seen many, many parallels between some of the mainstream institutional opposition to this realm of ideas, to their opposition to the resistance to the COVID narratives. So when you start debunking virology and viruses and that kind of thing, they come after you, and they do it in a very similar way when you start going after the sacred cow of their history and of NASA and that kind of thing. It's really fascinating to see how similar their response, the kind of knee-jerk response, is to those things. And I would say the whole flat earth-ish concept and the whole anti-vaxxer virology thing, those are the two biggest things that get that kind of knee-jerk response out there in any fields.
I fully understand. Never really spoken about flat Earth or NASA on the podcast, and we're nearly up to 400. I think David Avocado Wolf might have scratched just the surface. Maybe he might have just said a line or two about flat Earth. So I've never gone there.
Oh
I've watched
yeah, it's such a
I've-
loaded thing. But what I would say to this is that the where I started out in this journey was an interest in alternative history having to do with Tartaria. This notion that there was some kind of event, or maybe events, maybe periodic events, where things changed, and we had huge floods, or what have been called mud floods. All over the world you have these buildings with windows underground. That clearly, if you look at many of the early photographs from the 1800s, you have these sumptuous, incredible buildings, and then the streets are just mud holes. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. So I was very interested in this notion of alternative history. But when you begin looking at that, and resets of some kind that could be man-made, they could be natural, they could be a combination. When you see this begin to happen, you're looking at this body of research, and it's a relatively large body of research with some really smart people clapping their brains on this material. You begin to see that you can't go here without at least delving into the idea that all of history, all of science, all of it is a fabrication. And as soon as you go there and you begin looking at the inconsistencies in the heliocentric model and what we're told by astrophysicists and geologists and that kind of thing, it gets deeper and deeper and deeper. And at the very least, an honest person would have to conclude that we're not being given an accurate picture of the world that we're living
in. Definitely. And some could say that by ingesting plant medicines or other types of psychedelics, that gives you a glimpse into a larger reality. But what you're talking about is actually manipulated or concealed information or suppressed information. I've seen a video where what you were just talking about clearly gives the opportunity for the viewer to come to their own conclusions, especially in relation to some of the architecture and buildings, as you talked about from the 1800s, etc. Maybe you want to explain that a little bit more, or a little bit in more detail for the listeners to wrap their head around.
Topic. Yeah, I mean, I can just sort of scratch the surface, and I can't say that I'm an expert. I'm a student of all of this. I'm not even sure that experts exist in this realm, because this is a kind of team effort, and people are choosing bits and pieces of the puzzle to focus on. For example, there's a channel I could recommend on YouTube, John Levi. It's JONLEVI. That's one word, the name of the channel. And he really gives an kind of an in-depth look at this Tartarian concept, this idea of mud floods, the idea that there have been these resets involving, large-scale destruction and that kind of thing, that were then capitalized on by nefarious players to basically send people across the country on orphan trains and do all of these things and repopulate these cities as the inheritors of this other realm, this other society that had gone bust, basically through a cataclysm. So John Levi would be an excellent channel for that. My YouTube channel, I'm going to give you that right now, because yesterday I just interviewed probably the most famous figure in all of the flat earth movement. His name is David Weiss. And so you can go to YouTube, Crow Rising, like crow, like the bird, Crow Rising. And my latest video there is with an interview with David Weiss. And we were absolutely all over the place. I titled the talk, the David Weiss and Saul Luckman talk, Tartaria, Great Reset, Crater Earth, New Lands, and quote unquote extraterrestrials.
So, Tartaria, tell me about that.
Tartaria, yeah. So, I mean, that's oh God, that's a fascinating concept. I'll also say, Pete, that, I got into this because I had been studying the Gnostic view of the earth as a living being, and specifically as the goddess that created humanity. But the goddess also created our nemesis in a form of an artificial form of intelligence that the ancient Gnostics referred to as archons.